Did you think that taking somebody else's life was bad? You're a white supremacist. That's why you think these things. The worst thing you can be is a racist. And in some ways, they're right. Because the worst thing you could be that threatens the global empire of elites who want us to all be one mixed mongrel race with no roots in anything is a racist. Because this puts up all kinds of barriers to their goal. And in fact, their real goal is to simply get rid of white people who they perceive as their single greatest threat to total global domination. Today, on the list of horrible crimes committed that don't even come close to racism, we've got a couple of tragic stories, actually. And I take no joy in reporting these. This was a young kid. You guys might be seeing this. Austin Metcalf, a 17-year-old kid, looks like a strong white male, not gay. That's rare, who got stabbed to death on a track meet while he was there with his twin brother by a black kid. That's right. It's not racist to report that a black did this to a white, because when it's the other way, the media doesn't let you forget. It's pretty tragic. Apparently, Austin went to the track with his twin brother. This black kid was supposedly sitting in the wrong seat, and he went up to him and asked him to move. And instantly, the black kid starts chimping out, "Make me." Austin made the fatal mistake of trying to enforce his policy. And next thing you know, he's stabbed to death and dies in his twin brother's arms. Really tragic. I wish this on no one. I wish this on no one, white, black, Muslim, Jewish. I do not wish this on anyone. It is tragic. But it's especially tragic when we know that there isn't going to be any justice, that we're going to hear all of these platitudes and appeals to, we can't let race divide us. And why bring race into this? And I'll tell you why we bring race into this. Because the truth of the matter is that the kid, Anthony Carmelo, who stabbed Austin, is most likely motivated by racial hatred. There is a brewing racial hatred of minority groups towards white people, because this is what they are fed day in and day out by our tribe run media, which hates Europeans. They continuously tell the minorities how special and wonderful they are, and that if it wasn't for white people, they would be doing all kinds of amazing things. Heck, they'd probably even be flying. If you think I'm exaggerating, you should go look at some of these "we was kangs" claims and the pictures they use from AI that shows Egypt being totally run by black people and like this super advanced civilization. They ignore all the archaeological evidence that shows that the great pharaohs were of European descent. They had red hair and fair skin and blue eyes, and these were depicted all through the hieroglyphics. But don't worry, we can live in your fantasy world that is being fed by a Hollywood run driven propaganda machine. Now, I got a couple things that I want to touch on with the Austin Metcalf story. He was a 4.0 student, football recruit. I mean, he could have been a dropout. I really don't care. But it is really sad when we lose what we would consider good genetic stock, right? I mean, look at this guy's strong chin. He looked like a male that would actually enforce order, moral righteousness. And he gets taken out by basically somebody who doesn't belong in civilized society, who can't, low impulse control, immediately flies into a rage when somebody simply asks him to move, which, Austin, you know, your parents didn't teach you well, right? If your parents had had any modicum of racism, they would have told you,
get the hell away from black people. Just get the fuck away.
and you would be here with us today. It's a tragedy. This is why I say racism saves lives. Okay? They don't want you to know that. They want you to believe all these platitudes and bullshit. Teach your kids to be racist. You might just save their lives. By the way, I don't mean go out and be bigoted and hateful towards everybody of a different persuasion, but just know what the trends are, know why these stereotypes exist, and know, especially in today's society where people of a certain racial persuasion are not held accountable at all for any of their actions. This is intentional. And you got to understand, when you're dealing with people with low impulse control, low IQ, low ability to plan, the only thing that stops them from doing heinous things like this are knowing the consequences will be swift and severe. So we've taken that away, and all we're doing is feeding people psychopathy. If you go watch any video on narcissism or psychopaths, the first thing they will tell you is these people don't understand anything except consequences. That's it. Swift, clear, and definitive consequences that are enforced regularly. All right. And usually these videos are about you dated a narcissistic man, or your dad's a narcissist, or any of this stuff, or you're dealing with your mom who's a narcissist. This is how you got to deal with it. But this is also true when you have a whole culture that's narcissistic. And sorry to everybody got upset at me for my tweet about Kendrick Lamar's Super Bowl performance. And look at that. Turns out I was right, which is actually why they really got mad, because they want you to accept this total blackification of American culture, and not just accept it, but be happy about it, be gleeful, celebrate it. And so when you call it out for what it is with a critical tone, everybody pounds down on you because you're a threat to the agenda. Oh well, I'm going to have to keep being a threat because the alternative is to watch your kids be stabbed to death. But don't worry, nobody will call you racist. What a load of shit. On that path, the father has already said that he's forgiven his son's killer. And he's sad not only at the loss of his son, but the fact that now this kid is going to have to go to jail and the loss of his future life. This is what I'm talking about when I say white Americans are totally cocked. Are you kidding me? Look, I feel for the father. I feel for his family. Who knows? You can't, this is an unimaginable pain. But you should be seeking justice. Forgiveness is something that you can only give when someone's repented. That's forgiveness. Forgiveness is when somebody actually feels sorry for what they did. They realize there's no way this kid has a shred of remorse. But here you are doling out forgiveness. This is weak. Let's contrast this with how George Floyd's family reacted after their fentanyl addicted criminal son got killed because he was resisting arrest. Did any of them have any modicum of remorse for the cop who was doing his job, who basically was thrown to the wolves so that we wouldn't have race riots, which we still had, by the way? And all the white people who are like, there will be no riots. Yeah, maybe you should start rioting. It seems like they're effective. It seems like your whole, ooh, violence is not the answer, we need to be understanding, is not working. It's not working. Okay. That's not going to get you results. That's going to keep getting you killed because you're dealing with a population that is low in empathy, is low in compassion, and is low in understanding the consequences of their actions. The only thing that works when you're dealing with a population like that is swift and immediate consequences. It's not just Austin and his family that have to deal with this. This is happening all through Europe. Because guess what, whites? They don't want you to have your own country. They don't want you to have your own society where you can raise your children without fear of being attacked by third world mongrels. A young girl was attacked by an Eritrean man, Eritrean, African, okay, who tried to rob and rape her. She defended herself with a knife and fatally wounded the attacker. Good, okay? You try to rape someone, you deserve to die. What happened to women's rights? I guess they don't matter if you're not a minority. So what did Germany do? The total cuck state of Germany, who's still apologizing for something that whose only crime was not wanting their whole country's economy destroyed by an international banking cabal. What did they do? Oh, she's on trial. She's facing charges of intentional bodily harm resulting in death. Okay? And you might think, oh, this is an extreme case. No. This is what they want throughout the white Western world. Let's look at how every chance they get, the left likes to bring up Kyle Rittenhouse, who is on camera defending himself from 3 people who were trying to kill him. You need to get something straight. You are not going to win a logical argument with these people. You're not going to convince them of the truth of your side because they don't care about the truth. They are motivated by an irrational hatred, resentment, and envy of you because of what you are. So, for all the cries of racist that they throw at you, the truth becomes that they are actually the racists that they keep crying out against. They are the bigots and the ones motivated by hate. And you're not going to win this over by appeals to empathy and compassion. You need to grow a pair. There needs to be a demand for serious and severe justice against these people who are not only the criminals, but also the criminal conspirators in our governments, the judges, the police, every single one of these people who are a part of why these policies are taking root. What's happening, especially in America, is you have a black population that believes simultaneously in their incredible abilities and magical powers while also believing they are severe victims of discrimination. And nothing could be further from the truth. And we can see this most clearly with college admissions. So if anybody's been paying attention to Twitter, it's college admission season, and we are seeing post after post of stellar students getting 1580s or 1600s, by the way, which is a perfect score on their SAT, 4.0 GPAs, a crazy list of extracurriculars, overqualified candidates being rejected from college. How could that be? Well, we look at their race and then we see why. It makes perfect sense. Meanwhile, you've got way less qualified candidates who come from a minority persuasion getting in. You would think that the black students getting in this way had a sense of gratitude, like, okay, you lowered the standards a little bit to meet me where I was at. Maybe I didn't have the same abilities, but this is really nice. No. The arrogance of the psyche that's been created by this, and again, I obviously don't mean all black people. There's tons of black conservatives who work really hard for what they do, don't have this sense of entitlement and this arrogance about themselves, but that's not who I'm talking about. That's not the focus of my video. So I'd like to bring up two tweets that really demonstrate the absolute arrogance and why this is so infuriating. Zach Yadagari, 18 years old, 34 ACT, which is a perfect score, 4.0 GPA. He has a $30 million, I don't know what ARR stands for, biz, but I read his personal statement, and it's a tech company that he started, and I think it helps people lose weight. So this 18-year-old started a $30 million startup business, okay? And he still wants to go to college. Why? I don't know, Zach. He's going to go there to get indoctrinated by a bunch of Marxist professors who are going to repeatedly tell you how you're bad because you're white. Let's take a look at all the schools he got rejected from. Stanford, MIT, Harvard, Yale, Washington University, Columbia, UPenn, Princeton, Duke, USC, UVA, NYU. Well, that was a lost cause. Vanderbilt, Brown, Cornell. And I read his personal statement, and the personal statement was well written, and it talked about his journey from where he started kind of a little bit arrogantly and then realizing that he was missing some depth and the self-awareness that him as this young kid interviewing these people with 24 years of experience was kind of unordered. Let's leave it to what looks like a black male, Kareem Carr. He's a statistics person. Yeah, we'll see how much of a statistics person he is when he understands per capita. Says, whenever I see students with good grades but lots of college rejections, my first thought is a bad personal essay. Okay. First of all, this whole thing about writing a really good personal essay and then that somehow overshadows everything you do or don't do as a college student is the most Jewish thing I've ever seen in my life. It's not about what you do, it's about how well you can talk yourself into a certain position. That's great, because if I have a leak in my house, I don't want the best qualified plumber. I want the plumber who can tell me about how he overcame ethnic and minority hardship to become a plumber. And even though he's only got like a 60% success rate, it's still really important that I hire him. What a load of shit. On top of that, the arrogance of this guy says, as predicted, this guy's essay was kind of a disaster. Actually, it wasn't. It was really good. Let's contrast that with Lottie Day, yes, a black female, who doesn't post her statistics about grades or SAT scores because we already know they're not up to par. Got accepted into Columbia, read her essay. Her essay was not about anything she accomplished. Her essay was about things her dad and grandfather accomplished. So it's not even about what she did. It's about parroting this communist propaganda bullshit. Here's a line. My father carried that torch forward, battling the deeply ingrained racism of pre-civil rights America. So deeply ingrained that your father was able to get into Columbia and succeed. He said, I broke my knees running away from white women. He would joke, a somber nod to the paranoia and fear black men often endured. Ugh, sickening. Right. The fear black men endured from white women, because white women might just stab you in the chest and watch you die and bleed because you asked them to move. The mistake that Zach made when I looked at his profile, honestly, Zach, you should have just written about the Holocaust and how you're a Holocaust survivor. Trust me, it doesn't matter that you're 18 years old. You can be any age and be a Holocaust survivor. It's irrelevant. I guarantee you that if you had talked about your Jewish heritage and overcoming all these difficulties of being Jewish and how even with all that, inferiority complex, living in a white Western society that doesn't like you, you still overcame, you would have gotten into all these schools. Guarantee it. At least half. For sure you would have gotten to Columbia and NYU because we all know who runs those. In case you guys think I'm being excessive or bigoted or racist, there's actual statistics to back me up. There was a Supreme Court file for the Harvard's admissions. It was brought by an Asian student. Asians, by the way, get the most discriminated against For some reason, our globalist overlords don't like Asians in college. I don't know, maybe because they're actually smart and good at what they do, and they would outcompete their chosen people for spots. So they don't allow it. They get a very low quota for Asians that they'll allow. There's also a low quota for white, non-Jewish students that they will allow, and I'll get into that too. Through that trial, they found out that there was discrimination at Harvard in favor of black applicants with terrible academics. In fact, they had higher odds of getting in than a top decile white applicant. I do think an education is important. I don't think we need to have a bunch of uneducated people walking around, but I think we need to reclaim what our schools are teaching kids. And until you get these Marxist professors out, I wouldn't be sending my kids there. I would look up conservative colleges. I would look up private colleges. And then you also have people going on YouTube and openly bragging that they're getting into law school with low LSAT scores. Here is a chart that shows you how, since affirmative action was started, it is against whites and Asians. Jews, however, become 25% of the student population. Let me remind you, they're supposedly 3% of the US population. A lot of times what happens is when they measure demographics, like how many white students do we have, how many black students, how many Asian students, they lump Jews and whites together, and then it makes it look like there are more whites at colleges than there actually are. And before everybody starts with me like, oh, the Jews are just higher performing, I think this might have been true like a couple generations ago when you had these Jewish immigrants who really wanted to work hard and accomplish things. But what you have happening now with like second and third generation Jews is the same thing that kind of happens anytime somebody gets wealthy, right? The kids kind of get spoiled, they get lazy and entitled. And because they have sort of a nepotistic network that works for their own benefit, they don't really have to try. And when you look at the statistics behind what their scores are going in, it doesn't justify the overrepresentation, not nearly to the point where you can have them be 25% of the student body. And one of the things you hear all the time are cries for representation, representation. Well, what the hell do you mean by that? Because if we were going to go through representation in terms of demographics of America, well, then whites should be the majority, because for now, they're still the majority of the population. Then it should be the next group. Black should maybe represent 8% of the student body. A lot of them don't like to study or go to school, and a lot of them aren't even literate when they get out of school because, once again, there are no consequences when they go to school and don't do their homework, don't pass tests, and just really are there to cause a ruckus. There are no consequences because, God forbid, that would be racist. Jews maybe would be higher than 3% because they are more intelligent than, let's say, the black or the Hispanic population, but they wouldn't be 25%. This is why they like to emphasize, ooh, the personal statement. The personal statement really could show who an applicant is. Okay, explain to me this kid who got into Stanford after submitting his personal statement, which just said hashtag Black Lives Matter over and over and over and over again. How about this other Indian student? And you guys know, me and the Indians, we don't always get along. Okay, but shout out to this Indian. He gets rejected from medical school when he applies as an Indian, but then he pretends to be black and gets accepted. There is a push to erase white people and erase white culture, and you're part of it, by the way. Your acceptance and toleration of this bullshit, your mimicking of this culture, you're playing this music as if it's your music and it's just trash, shaking my ass. It's all CIA driven, by the way. It's the complete demoralization of the culture. And what you have to do is look at yourself. What are you doing that's accepting the propaganda? You get what you tolerate. If it was good, you wouldn't need to tolerate it. It comes down to personal accountability. I think every single one of us needs to look at where in our lives we're being cowards and not speaking up when there's injustice, not saying the truth because we're afraid that we're going to be labeled racist or anti-Semitic or homophobic. Those are the weapons of the enemy. You've got to let them slide off your back. Basically, there's just a lot of horse shit going on. And as I like to say, be racist. It might save your life.